Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. First thing you might notice is that the background is really different. I just moved to an apartment in New York City, so this is going to be the background for the future videos, just to give you a heads up. Also, lighting, audio might sound a little bit different. I'm still working on it to make it perfect. If you have any suggestions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. But today, we are here to talk about the Phoenix Suns. One of my favorite conversations heading into each season is who are the contenders in the NBA. I myself made a video putting teams in tier lists a couple weeks ago, and I put the Suns in the contender tier. And there are a lot of you who didn't like that take. And just being on NBA Twitter, in the NBA community as active as I am, I've seen a lot of people say that the Phoenix Suns are not contenders. And I disagree. I think the Phoenix Suns have become underrated because of the way their season ended. Over the course of the whole year, they had a great season. They set the franchise record for wins. They led the West by 8 games at the end of things. They won 18 straight games at one point, had the 4th best offense, 3rd best defense. They had a phenomenal season. And to me, they felt like the clear favorites to win it all heading into the playoffs. I still don't think that was a crazy take, as much as some people didn't like it, and it didn't end up becoming true. I still felt pretty passionately about that take heading into the playoffs. And then, of course, you get to Game 7 against Dallas, where the Suns lost in my opinion, probably the most shocking result I've ever seen. I was at a birthday dinner for the first half of that game, and by the time I got home, I was like, oh, I'll check the score, see what's going on. They were down 30 points at halftime. They lost by 33 and were down 40 multiple times in the game. It was a loss so bad, the Suns issued a formal apology. You know how bad you have to lose to issue an apology on your team Twitter account? It has to be embarrassing. It was an anomaly, and I'm not here to make excuses for the Suns. They blew that game, and the Mavericks won that game as well as the series. They completely earned it. I'm definitely lower on the Suns now than I was then because of that result, but I think because of how shocking that result was, people have started to underrate them a little bit and are overlooking what they did last season. People are saying that, oh, they think they'll be a fringe playoff team. I still think the Suns are going to be one of the best teams in the West, can win the NBA Finals, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're the 1 seed heading into the playoffs again. Like I said, they had a phenomenal season, and I don't think this is a Jazz situation where we saw the Utah Jazz, make a couple okay playoff runs after being one of the best teams in the West, but most people kind of knew that they weren't really the best team. I think the Phoenix Suns are not that situation. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league, and they just made a finals a year ago and are bringing back once again a lot of the core pieces that got them there. So let's talk a little bit about this Phoenix Suns team, what went wrong, and why I'm still pretty confident in them. Now, of course, when you talk about this Phoenix Suns team, you have to start off with talking about their backcourt, Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Now, they did collapse at the end of the Dallas series, shooting 0 for 11 in the first half of that blowout loss in Game 7 and combined for a 1.5 assist to turnover ratio across the whole series, which is really dismal for two players who really run the entire offense through them. However, over the course of the entire season, these two guys were really good, and I think a lot of people forget how good they were because of how, like I said, the playoffs ended for them. Chris Paul last season averaged 14.7 points and 10.8 assists per game, which led the league. And then in the playoffs, he averaged 17.5 points and 8.3 assists on 56, 38, 94 splits in the playoffs. He was really good over the course of the entire thing. Additionally, he had to really carry at the end of the Pelican series after D-Book went down with injury. He had 28, 4, and 14 in Game 4, 22, 11, 6, and 3 in Game 5, and in Game 6, he had 33 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists on a perfect 14 of 14 shooting in a Game 6 series-clinching win where Book did return, but he was clearly very limited. He wasn't the aggressive player we've come to know Devin Booker as. He also started the Mavs series with 19-5-3 and 28-6-7 in 2 wins. He was really good for that first portion of the playoffs, but that is when he really started to fall off. He scored just 12 points with 7 turnovers in Game 3, 5 points and fouled out in Game 4, 13 points with 5 turnovers in Game 6, and just 10 points in that crazy blowout in Game 7. Now, Chris Paul, like I said, was really good over the course of the whole season, but he does shoulder a lot of the blame for the way things ended. I do think partially what contributed to it was the load he had to carry in that Pelican series. I think it took a big toll on him physically. If you remember, Jose Alvarado was all up in his face. They were throwing Herb Jones at him. The Pelicans have a lot of really solid defenders, and so I think it really wore Chris Paul out. Typically, he has Devin Booker to do most of the scoring, but when a guy who's 37 years old has to go out and drop 33 points on a perfect 14 for 14 shooting just to beat an 8 seed, it's going to take a lot out of you. He also had to put up really good stats like we talked about in the first 2 wins in the Mavs series. So I think overall, while I'm not making excuses for Chris Paul because he should have played at a lot better. You can't go out like that in a game 7. I do think that is partially part of the reason why they ended up struggling, or why he ended up struggling so much in that loss. So I don't expect him to really have games like that again if guys stay healthy in the playoffs. However, I do think guys need to kind of shoulder a bit more of the load this upcoming season. I expect him to still be really, really good, an all-star caliber player, as well as a fringe all-NBA guy, but I think the Suns need someone to take some of that scoring load off of him. And of course, a lot of that goes away if Devin Booker is healthy. And he was great this season when he did play. He put up 26.8 points per game, which is a career high, 5 rebounds, which is also a career high, and 4.8 assists, shooting 46.6% from the field, 38.3% from 3, and 86.8% from the line. Somehow he's also only 25 years old. I swear every time I check his age, he gets younger. I swore he was like 26, 27. Feels like he's been 25 for 6 years, but regardless, he's arguably already the best shooting guard in the NBA. You can debate that in the comments below if you want, but he's up there in that conversation. And he's a guy who only continues to get better and better. Like I said, he just averaged a career high in points. He's been getting better defensively as well. He did get hurt in the first round, but he dropped 31 points in the first half before he left that game with injury in game 2. And then later on in the Mavs series, he had a game where he dropped 30, a game where he dropped 35, and a game where he dropped 28 points. However, like with Chris Paul, game 6 and game 7 is where he really dropped off, shooting just 6 for 18 in game 6 and 3 for 14 in game 7. He's got to be better than that as their number 1 scoring option. I do think some of that was coming back from injury, but even so, he's got to be better, and I am confident he will be. A lot of times when teams suffer these huge, embarrassing losses, they come back with a vengeance next season, and I believe Chris Paul and Devin Booker will do that. Of course, though, they're going to need help from their supporting cast. Mikal Bridges is one guy in particular who I'm really excited about this upcoming season. He's still super young at just 25 years old. By the way, he's somehow older than Devin Booker, which feels like a fake stat, but it's real. I promise you. I checked on Basketball Reference 3 times before making this video. But he just finished 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting despite being just 25 years old. He played all 82 games last season. He's an Iron Man, and he averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.2 steals last season, while shooting 53% from the field, 37% from 3, and 83% from the free throw line. He was really, really efficient. He's one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league, and I expect him to continue to get better. I expect that he will still be in those Defensive Player of the Year conversations. He's a guy that can lock up opposing teams' best scorer on any given night. He did get a bit torched in the playoffs, but I think part of that could be, coming back and you have these blowout losses and you're missing sometimes your star players. It is a lot to burden for a 25-year-old guy. I expect him to come back and be better this upcoming season, especially in the playoffs. I would honestly like to see him take a bit more of a role on offensively. Like I said, he is really, really ridiculously efficient. The problem is he's not a guy who's going to really create his own shot often, but I would like to see him get more of those opportunities to see what he can do as you continue to try and get some of that load off Chris Paul and Devin Booker, who, if they struggle like they both struggled in some of those games, the Suns completely fall apart. They need more guys who can step up, and I believe Bridges is a guy who can fit into that role a little bit more than he did last season. Then, of course, you have DeAndre Ayton, who was really the big story of the offseason for this team. He returned after most people thought he was gone. The Pacers threw him a max offer sheet in restricted free agency. They cleared space for him, and it seemed like the most likely outcome was him being signed and traded somewhere, but he ends up coming back to the Phoenix Suns. There was a lot of drama at the end of the playoffs between him and his role with Monty Williams, and that is definitely concerning, but he did have a really solid year last season, averaging 17, 10, and 1.4. He upped his scoring average to 17.9 points in the playoffs, but I do think he needs to be more aggressive offensively, and the Suns need to put him in position to do that. And I expect that that's a conversation that will happen between him and Monty Williams. Once again, I think an embarrassing loss like that, while it can lower the public perception of a team, I believe that it really probably provided a huge reality check for the Phoenix Suns, realizing that they have to change things up and do things differently, something that I think this team really needed, including Monty Williams, who I'm a huge fan of as a coach, but it feels like he really failed to make proper adjustments versus Dallas. He had to find more ways to take pressure off of CP3 and Booker, get Ayton more involved, abuse that matchup. He had a lot of smaller guys on him. And while it is, of course, Ayton does, I think, need to work on his post-scoring game a bit to take better advantage of those mismatches, he really wasn't ever put in great position to score either. Monty Williams is still one of the best coaches in the league in my eyes, and I think that this huge revelation that probably came from that embarrassing loss will only make him better. I think he'll realize he needs to use Ayton more, and I think, Ayton and the Suns will kind of realize that they need each other in this situation, and that now they're stuck with each other. There is no upcoming free agency. DeAndre Ayton probably wanted out, and the Suns probably wanted him gone, but now that they're back together, I think they will figure things out. Winning fixes all problems in the NBA. You have so many teams that blow up because they can't win, but when teams win, things are kind of figured out. And so I think the Suns heading into the season will find a lot of success, at least over the course of the regular season. And I think a lot of this drama will go away. I think they're going to focus a lot less on chasing their franchise win total. I think they'll focus more on giving guys some rest. They'll focus on trying new things out, like how do we get Bridges and Ayton involved? And I think that will help them a lot in the long term, especially in the playoffs. Also, you've got really good role players like Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, who have both been really solid for this team. Cam Johnson's still young. Crowder's getting a bit older, but he is really serviceable for the moment. Bismack Biyombo also played really solid minutes. Campaign is going to need a bounce back season. He really struggled last year, but I do expect him to be a bit better. Dario Saric is going to be returning from injury, and he's someone that I think can really help this team out a lot. I'm excited to see what he does for them. They've got Landry Shamet as a shooter. I don't expect that he'll play a ton. You've got Torrey Craig if you just need depth. I also learned in research for this, they signed Josh Okogie at some point, which I don't know when they did that, but he's on the roster, so I can confirm that. However, all this being said, they've got good role players. I'm still really confident in guys like Booker, Bridges, Ayton, Chris Paul. I'm confident in those guys as a 4. I think they really can do great things. I think this is a wake-up call. I think that they really needed, because they went to the finals, they got kind of complacent. They really didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. I think now they're going to have waken up a little bit, realize what they need to do, take some pressure off Chris Paul, get some more help to him and Devin Booker, have Ayton get more involved. I'd like to see Bridges continue to get better, but this is a mostly young team that is going to continue to get better. They've got one of the best coaches in the league. I do, however, despite all of that and believing they still are a contender, I do think they have some changes they need to make. Specifically, they need more shot creators. They stood pat at the deadline last season while teams like the Celtics filled a hole in their roster with Derek White, and he ended up being a huge pickup. He could have been someone that would have been great for the Phoenix Suns. And it makes sense to not want to mess up a good thing, but at the same time, you have to continuously improve in the NBA or you get left behind. If the Celtics hadn't added a guy like Derek White, maybe they lose against the Milwaukee Bucks. He was someone who really helped out. Maybe they lose against the Miami Heat. But no, they made that addition at the deadline, and he was huge for them. The Suns should have gone out and gotten a similar player, someone who could just create a shot for others, because really right now, it's still Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Campaign might be a little bit better than he was last season, but I think they still do need to make some moves to truly establish themselves amongst the really, really best in the Western Conference. I think right now they're behind the Warriors, they're behind maybe the Denver Nuggets, the Los Angeles Clippers. I think they're right now 3rd or 4th in the Western Conference totem pole. They've got to make some moves and really prove themselves to get back to the top, but I do still believe they will be in the race to win the Western Conference. They're still a really good team, regardless of the way the season ended in embarrassing fashion, and in my opinion, as embarrassing as it was, I think it was a necessary wake-up call. So, those are my thoughts on the Phoenix Suns. I appreciate y'all watching. Let me know down below if you agree with me that the Suns have become kind of underrated, and if they still do deserve to be looked at as a contender. And if you don't agree, also let me know that in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. Appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy, and I will see y'all later. Real one, say it back.